person's ability to serve as a commissioner, drawing the district lines for legislative and Board of Equalization districts.
The Act is very clear in specifying that this process should be transparent and untainted by politics. It is of my opinion that the federal government, all branches, all areas of the federal government are suffused with a very heavy overload of politics. So if we are to truly have a transparent process for the Commission, people who have been associated with a highly political environment need to be excluded. Now, I realize there are individuals who clearly can set those things aside. And there are people with the DEA, for example, who are as apolitical as they come, perhaps. Okay? But you've got to look at it as a general class of people. Okay? Within that class, there are large numbers of people who are very active in the political environment. And how do you sort them out from the rest of them? Okay, that's my concern. We want it to be a transparent process. I very clearly want to see it become a transparent process. And any taint of political involvement, political party involvement, would destroy that.
Do you see a distinction between management or people who would, for example, have more of an opportunity to have contact with the governor's office or the legislature and rank and file employees?
I would expect rank and file people to be less active politically and the management people to be much more active politically. My opinion. Okay. Any other questions?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much, folks.
Okay, next up on our list we have the California Forward Working Group. And as you come up, please identify yourselves for the record.
My name is Malka Kopel. Good morning, and I'm from California Forward. California Forward is a bipartisan public interest organization whose mission is to improve the quality of life for all Californians by creating more responsive, representative, and cost-effective government. As many of you know, California Forward was a strong supporter of Prop 11, but even though it is now law, we do not consider our work done until the Voters First Act is implemented and the Citizens Redistricting Commission has successfully completed its work. The first important step in that implementation is an accessible application process that reaches out to all Californians and a thoughtful selection process that results in a qualified and diverse group of commission members. To that end, we thank you for allowing us the opportunity to provide input on these regulations. Today I'm speaking not only for California Forward, but I am one of many who are representing a group of organizations who have been working collaboratively over the past several months to help facilitate the implementation of the Voters First Act. The members of this group include the League of Women Voters of California, California Common Cause, California State NAACP, the National Association of Latino Elected and Appointed Officials Educational Fund, the California Voter Foundation, the Center for Governmental Studies, the Asian Pacific American Legal Center, and the Rose Institute for State and Local Government. Our working group has spent the last month and a half closely reviewing and discussing the proposed regulations. We were impressed by the thoroughness shown by your staff in developing these regulations, and we applaud your intent to facilitate the smooth implementation of the Act by filling in some of the details. We also appreciate your willingness to listen to our input and the input of other interested organizations and individuals during the Interested Persons meetings earlier this year. That willingness to listen to the public is apparent in your detailed and thoughtful response. We did, however, want to bring some items to your attention. Some of these items reflect concerns that we share and suggestions for ways to address those concerns, and others are suggestions for clarifying language. We've put our thoughts into writing and just submitted them to you today. We'd also like to communicate our thoughts orally, and to do that, the various members of the group will present the jointly agreed upon points as they come up to the podium. Some members of the group may present additional points as well. These are points that the group as a whole did not have the time to get to, or that we did not reach a final consensus on, or in some cases may just reflect the position of the member organization itself, but that'll be clear in the presentation. And I'm going to start by bringing up a couple of points. The first is regarding Section 60847, Phase 2 application. We suggest that information required of an applicant should be limited to those questions directly relevant to a determination of whether an applicant is qualified. Asking for information relating to an applicant's involvement with political and community organizations and causes is understandable, since presumably those experiences can help demonstrate an applicant's appreciation for diversity or possession of relevant analytical skills. But narrowing the scope of information sought from the applicant may help ensure that that information provided is relevant to a determination of whether an applicant is qualified, and may make it easier for the applicant. As such, we suggest a revision to Section 60847 to only seek information that the applicant deems relevant to service on the Commission and satisfying the qualifications specified in the Voters First Act. Also, we believe that the requiring disclosure of financial contributions made to any of the above organizations and causes may unduly intrude on an applicant's privacy, and is not likely to obtain much more relevant information than by excluding it. Additionally, disclosure of financial contributions to organizations and causes would undoubtedly be burdensome, in particular for those persons who have made several contributions over the relevant time period. And you are asking for information on an applicant's involvement with those causes. Nonprofit organizations, while being required to disclose to the IRS the names and addresses of persons making large donations, are not required to disclose that information to the public. And many organizations seeking to protect their donors from harassment or undue attention keep that information confidential. So we suggest to delete the reference to financial contributions. But we still think that will still allow the applicant review panel to obtain relevant information that will allow adequate review of the applicant's qualifications. My second point is regarding the Phase 3 interviews. The regulations, as currently written, don't make it clear if the interviews will be videotaped and posted on a rolling basis or after all are completed. So we wanted to ask that the videotaped interviews not be made public until after all the interviews have taken place. If they are posted on a rolling basis, those who are interviewed later could possibly view the interviews of those who came before them and enjoy an unfair advantage. Those are my 2 points, and I will defer to the other members of the working group. Thank you.
Does anybody on the panel have questions for Malka?
I had a question. In your suggestion that we leave it up to the applicant to decide what information to share about past associations, activities, and so forth, aren't we creating a situation where someone can, by his or her application, look like the greatest candidate in the world, an absolutely impartial candidate, and yet if the person revealed more about himself or herself, we could find out things about that person that may be negative? In other words, to quote an outrageous example, let's say someone who on his application shows that he was involved in some very civic-minded organizations and so forth, yet at some point during the relevant period was involved with a very racist organization, for example. If we leave it up to the applicant would probably not want to share that with us. And yet if we pry more into what all of that person's associations were, what that person's activities were, then that might provide us with a basis upon which, or the ARPA basis upon which to exclude a person either because of some questionable associations or because the person was not fully candid and honest about what that person's been doing.
You make a good point. I think some members of our group may want to speak to that. I think the reason that we brought it up was that if it's left absolutely open, it may be so much information that an applicant may be discouraged from applying. And so perhaps there's some way in the application you can strike a more careful balance. But I think your point is well taken. We don't want the applicant to exclude information, but we